Con, we're going to talk about Little Bird now, which I couldn't be happier about, may I add.
Is that the only song you like?
No comment.
There's a little bird.
Yeah, researching for this, I found myself in a YouTube hole watching Nothing But Thieves interviews that you'd done.
Sure.
And in one interview, you got asked what you're scared of more than anything in the world. And you replied saying, spiders. I know you quite well. The public are going to know you quite well and how your psyche works after the release of this EP. So, spiders, really?
No. But I think maybe at the time, whenever those interviews were, just a lot less open than I am. So yeah, you just hide it. And also, like, I think I found it difficult to speak so openly on such a big platform like that, you know, previously.
Yeah, you can kind of tell from your mannerisms and reactions that you're not really present, and you're seemingly quite scared of what the real answer might be if you dug deep enough to find it. But that kind of suppression that you show in that moment highlights what the song is about, right? Suppression.
It's exactly about suppression and not dealing with anything you're going through at all, but not even fucking realising it, just burying it.
Yeah, the taboo is being lifted, and rightfully so, and it's becoming fashionable to talk now. And this particular song is obviously about when you're feeling drunk and quite sloppy, and sometimes people's tongues get a little looser when they're fucked up. But it's still really hard for men to open up about things. So I guess for you, do you find it harder to suppress what you're feeling, or do you find it harder to actually talk about it and get it all up and get it all out? What kind of comes more naturally for you?
Right. I mean, I think at the time of Little Bird and all before Little Bird, I suppressed everything easily, like in denial, like almost like lied to myself, lied to others about how I really felt and that sort of stuff, or what was going on inside me. And I remember this song in particular was bizarre when it was written, because I was outside having a barbecue with the band. We were recording in LA, which obviously was a really fun time, but I was just so fucked mentally. And I was like smoking a lot and drinking a lot and didn't even realise I was doing it. It was just helpful, I guess, to like not deal with anything. And I was at this barbecue and I was sitting there just like, everyone was having such a good time, and you don't want to fuck with that. So I just came inside and just sat on the bed that I was staying in and just like did Little Bird in like, I don't know, 5 minutes or something.
Wow.
I didn't mean to do it either. It was just like, just sort of came out. And again, it's like, it's where your subconscious writes something for you. There's a word for that, begins with a P. I can't remember it now. I'm not going to pretend I can. But it's, it's great. It's a great word. But, you know, your subconscious writes it for you. And then you get home and you're like, fucking hell, like, that's how I'm feeling. Like, I became aware that I was suppressing everything. And I wrote it without even having that awareness. And then you realise later, as you go into the next songs, and like I said, like, I started in therapy and like dealing with stuff, it's like, oh wow, like I had some foresight back then by accident that I just knew I was bottling a load of stuff that I hadn't uncorked. And obviously that happens in its own time, it takes its own time. But at that point, Little Bird is solely about suppression, yeah.
Well, I'll suffocate him with my smoke and my pills that make all the little creatures go away. I start wondering which person I love he will hurt one day. Later down the line, that little bird will burst out through my throat.
I can't talk about this song with you without mentioning one of my favourite writers, Charles Bukowski. There's obviously a huge nod to him in this song. His poem, Bluebird, was obviously a huge inspiration. And that poem is obviously about Bukowski's suppression of his internal monologue, and he obviously was quite self-deprecating as well. Do you also feel like you enjoy having these really somber and down moments because you can draw inspiration from them?
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's so much easier. I'm trying to do something in the future which is more on the other side and the hopefulness, but it's definitely easier. I don't know why, but that's like almost going back to the subconscious writing it for you. Like, you get into those states and it's like you can't help but try and release it through some sort of art and creativity. Yeah, it's not like I enjoy it. Do you know what I do enjoy? And I always say this to everyone, is like, I welcome when there's suffering in my life, whatever it happens, whether it's a new thing or like.
So is that to learn from?
Yeah, definitely. So like, obviously, you know, like I was recently diagnosed with some OCD stuff, and it's like, obviously at first you're in shock and you're like, how do I manage this? But then I welcome it because it shapes your next form and your next stage of who you are and what you can learn from it and better yourself and grow and face, essentially. So I welcome that suffering in a sense because, yeah, you learn so much and you can become a different person from it.
How do you think we can get more men talking?
I think, like, I want to try not to sound pretentious with this entire record and like any interview I ever do, but my job, I believe, is regardless of any songwriting or creativity. I believe, I know we've discussed this so many times, but my job as a human is to, like, I call it like planting trees and I don't know who they're going to shade. And what I'd like to say by that is like giving people the opportunity in the future to have it easier than we have. And what we do by that is like talk openly about this sort of stuff so it becomes so normal that at those early ages where things go wrong, which is what's happened to a lot of people, it's so normal to be open and talk about it, that those things don't go wrong. They go straight into therapy or they go straight to talking to them with their friend or family. I'm sure we've got like a fucking long way to go with that, but that's the idea for me. It's like, regardless of music or art and creating, I just want to do that all the time for my friends or anyone I meet, just be this kind of like shameless version of myself where I'm like, this is who I am, this is how I feel, and yeah. And then in turn, hopefully that makes other blokes go, oh, that's fine to say. You know, that's easy to say for him, so maybe let's try and make it, is it easy to say for me? Just start that narrative, start that question. But yeah, that's kind of the overall goal of like the next 50 years of my life, really. Yeah. I just want to do that all the time.
The interesting thing about this song is that the other four on the record kind of have this element of healing to them, whereas this one is more of kind of a statement of feeling. And it doesn't seem to kind of tail off or get better or have any sort of hope to it. No, this is what I found really beautiful about writing this for myself, like regardless of what came out or what people feel from it. It was like, it was so, because I wrote it in a very desperate state, it came out desperate, and the whole thing is one metaphor for suppression and release. Like, the verses are like so small and confined. The choruses are like almost like overly big and like hopeful, and then it suppresses again in the verses. And then the last bit, the middle eight to the end, whatever you call that section, I don't even know what it is, the last chorus, it never fully gets big. And then the last lyric is, are you ever coming out? And then just shuts right down again. How the song builds to an anticlimax and then you kind of don't allow it to, and you don't allow it to explode. It kind of feels like the metaphorical little bird actually being pushed down within the song. 100,000,000%. It wasn't coming out. It only came out like, last couple of years of like doing the work and after the realizations. That's what Brain in the Jar is about. That kind of like, oh fuck, yeah, I've got to do this shit. At the time of writing Little Bird, it was like thick in the mud of, I have all of this shit I need to think about and work on. No, I just didn't. I didn't know how to. Great questions, man. Yeah, do you want to talk about the writing process a little bit? I guess on like a really, really simple level, like it was the first time I'd done anything R&B or whatever that I listened to, like I'm quite obsessed with, and
that I've tried to kind of not even meant to, but kind of infiltrated into Nothing But Thieves music just because I love that sort of stuff. But this became kind of really cathartic to just do a hip hop beat, just that slow down, you know. There's just many a kind of break beat like that. 808 kit, you know. It just felt really good. It felt right to do that. And then that's actually what came first, was the beat. Chords next. Jazz chords as well. I wanted to make sure that, like, because I grew up with kind of soul, R&B and jazz, and I wanted to just create that perfect world of all those things. And I think that's probably why it came naturally, is because it was exactly what I wanted to create out of this man-made sunshine world. I'm trying to think anything more I want to say about the production side of it. It was just...
I know that you sent this to a number of different people to kind of look at and go over on the production side of things, because you wanted to keep things as kind of simple as possible, right? I'm not a producer, really. There's like bits and bobs of the production on Little Bird, all over the EP that is mine, but in reality, like, I can't really produce. And I had the crux of it, the base of it, and I sent to this like amazing wizard in America who does all of, like, you know, your A$AP Rocky and your Travis Scott, and I thought that would be a perfect fit, like someone who knows his way around a beat and like the most modern sound. And then what came back was obviously like amazing, like he's a wizard. But for me, what's so important about this EP was that every single nuance of every song felt emotive. And if I listened to it, every single tiny section of every song felt like it hit me emotionally. And when I got it back from that guy, it didn't work that way. It worked in like a clever way, technical way. But for me, like putting those old vintage jazz kits when it drops on that, how I suffer, like that kind of snappy jazz snare, just cut right through me. And I think I was really, really, really picky about every single sonic, lyric, vocal take to make sure that it affected me through the start of the song to the end of the song. And I think I believe I've done that with the entire EP. And I believe if you do that enough and you listen to it and you feel so much emotion by it, then someone else, somewhere else on the other side of the planet can connect to it too, because you've just put every single ounce of yourself in it and emotion through it, you know? I think this is the easiest to relate to because it's more of a statement and it's about how you're specifically dealing with the feeling that you're feeling, right?
Do you think that's why you connect to it the most? Because most people connect with suppressing it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the reason I connected with it so much is because you're telling me how you're feeling, whereas with the others, it's not necessarily guidance, but you're telling us how you're dealing with it. And that kind of subjectively applies to you, how you're navigating through it. Whereas with Little Bird, it's more of like this is how I'm feeling, and damn, that's exactly how I'm feeling too.
I don't think about that. That's the timeline though, isn't it? Now I think back on it, that's why it's so important that this song was first.
Well, yeah, it was the first song that you wrote, right? It was at the beginning of the journy that you're now kind of
exactly, and it's like
of.
All the other songs, like Brain in a Jar, is the questioning, isn't it? It's going, what the fuck is all of this? Like, well, who am I? What is it? That's why Little Bird is super important for me. It's like it was right in the thicket of the emotion without having any awareness of how to deal with it or what that even means or anything. I just didn't know anything at that point. I swear, like I've grown so much since that point of like who I am as a man, as myself. And that song is so kind of young and like infantile in a good way. It's like, it's not polished. It's not overly thought. It's just, I feel like this shit, crap. Is it ever going to get better? Is it ever coming out? That's, you know.
What would you call the Little Bird?
Well, it's a nod to your inner child, isn't it? Mm-hmm. always, that's all mental health always comes back to.
Did you have a childhood nickname?
Conquer.
Little Conker, the little bird.
Because I was always brown from being outdoors doing stuff. And then I had a really hard head. I used to have concussion all the time. I just used to smack my head and fall over. And so maybe it'd be Little Conker, the little bird. So stupid.
That could be the name of the next album. Thanks, Con.
No, man, that was awesome.
Enjoy your wine, mate.
Thanks, mate. It's very lovely.
Bye, mate.
Bye.
And it's dark in here. We could use the rest. Well, I'll suffocate him with my smoke and my pills that make all the little creatures go away.